Hi everyone, today I'm going to be changing the rear differential fluid in my 2001 Dodge Ram 1500. This hasn't been done in a while, and I've been hearing, seems like a whine from somewhere in the drivetrain recently. Since this is sort of an overdue item anyway, I figured I'd start with this first and see if it resolves the whine I've been hearing. So anyway, should be a pretty simple process. I've not done this on my own before, but it's pretty straightforward. So anyway, let's get to it. First things first, right here, this plug right there is the fill plug. You can see a little leakage there. I just made sure that I could get it out. It's just a rubber grommet basically. Just wanted to make sure that it wasn't stuck before I go draining all the fluid out. It comes out fine, as you can see, evidenced by the fluid that's leaking out. So anyway, I'll probably pull that first. My driveway's on a slight incline, so that's why the fluid wants to leak out there. I'll probably pull that and drain what fluid I can, and then I'm going to remove all of the bolts around the outside of the differential cover, except for, I guess, the top two. I'll probably leave those. I'll loosen them a little bit, but leave them hanging so that the cover won't just fall off. Then I can maybe stick a screwdriver up in between the cover and the diff housing and break the seal, and all the fluid should drain out into my drain pan here. So anyway, let me go ahead and get all these bolts removed, and then I'll see if I can't film the process of breaking the seal and letting the fluid loose. So I'll get to it and be back shortly. Alright, I've got all the bolts removed except for the top two, which I just loosened a little bit. All of them were 1/2 inch, and I ended up using a breaker bar just because they were kind of tight. Got them loose with that, and then just used my impact with a socket adapter to back them all the way out. So now I'm ready to try to break the seal. Hopefully I can do this while I film, but basically I'm just going to take a flathead screwdriver, wedge it up in here between the diff cover and the differential. This may be stuck more than I thought. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to do this with two hands, and I don't have anybody to film, so unfortunately looks like I may not get to show you that part. But anyway, the idea is to break the seal down here near the bottom, and you know, the cover will suspend off those two upper bolts, and you can just let everything dump into your drain pan. And then once it finishes draining, then we'll just pull the top two bolts out, and I want to inspect the differential and make sure everything looks good. And I'll probably give it a coat of paint while I have it off too, just because you see some rust on here. So anyway, it should be a pretty quick process. Let me go ahead and just see if I can get this separated, and I'll give you a shot while it's draining. Alright, well, I broke the seal. I had to took a 5-in-1 tool like this, like a paint tool, and gently tapped it in from the side with a hammer. Now I've just got a screwdriver in there wedged to keep the cover sort of separated. But you can see the fluid dripping out. Of course, it was a steady flow when I first broke the seal, but I mean, it doesn't hold that much fluid, so it drained pretty quickly before I could get the camera fired up. But anyway, I'm just going to let it drip for a little bit, and then I'll pull out these top two bolts and we'll take a look inside. Alright, well, got the cover off, and as far as I can tell, everything looks in pretty good shape. I don't see any major, gouges or wearing in the gears. I'm not a master mechanic, but everything looks pretty normal to me. Certainly I don't see any broken gear teeth or anything like that, so that's good. There is a little bit of sludge down here at the bottom of the diff housing. Hopefully that's fairly normal. So I'll clean that out. I'll wipe that out of the bottom of the diff housing. And then of course the cover I'll clean up. I guess I'll use probably brake cleaner for that. And I'll have to get all the old silicone gasket off of the cover, as well as the mating surface here on the housing all the way around. I'll use a plastic putty knife to scrape all this clean, and I'll wipe it down with brake cleaner. I'll probably maybe put a towel over all the guts of the differential first, so I don't get crud inside. But anyway, just it'll take a few minutes to get it all clean, and then I'll be ready to refill it. Also, like I said, I'll probably paint the back side of the cover, just because it's not in the best shape. I've just got some black engine enamel. It's good up to 500 degrees, which should be plenty good for the differential, I would think. So I've got a little bit of cleaning to do. Let me get to it, and I'll get this thing sprayed up. Alright, I've got the differential cover cleaned up pretty good. I found something pretty interesting in here. Obviously there was a hole in it at one point and somebody filled it with a weld, which is a little concerning. There's probably an interesting story behind that. It's not really noticeable on the backside very much. I mean, you can kind of tell if you're looking for it, but anyway, I mean, it obviously was holding fluid, so I'm not worried about that, but just thought that was interesting. You see I got the surface pretty clean. I just took a plastic putty knife like this and scraped off the majority of the silicone. You don't want to use metal, simply because it'll scratch the surface, which looks like somebody had already done. I don't know if this will show up on camera, but somebody did a number on this thing at one point. There's not any deep gouges per se, but there's a lot of surface scratches. You can probably see that's a pretty good one right there. I think with the silicone gasket it'll still seal. I mean, obviously it was holding fluid, but you know, it's not in great shape, but you know, it's a 13-year-old truck with almost 170,000 miles. It's my work truck. Not too worried about it. It'll be okay. So now that I got that clean, I wanted to get this clean first before I painted the back, just because, you know, I'm spraying brake cleaner on it. I don't want to spray brake cleaner all over the fresh paint. So anyway, now I'm going to hook up the wire brush wheel on my grinder and get some of this loose paint on here, get that off, and then I'll put some rust primer on and a couple top coats of black engine enamel just to dress it up, keep it from rusting. So that's that. I just wanted to show a quick shot of the cover, you know, after I got it clean and before paint. I'll get it painted up, and then we will get ready to bolt this back on and fill it back up with fluid. Okay, I've got the differential housing cleaned up as best I can. Again, I just took a plastic putty knife and a whole bunch of brake cleaner and rags and gently scraped the old gasket off. It was a silicone gasket maker that was on here before. That's what I'm going to go back with. And I found that just using my fingernail was as effective as anything to get off the really stubborn residue. So I've got it pretty clean now. I also used a little wire brush like this to chase out the old bolt holes. There's some silicone still in there, but I got most of it out. And of course, as I cleaned, I had all the differential guts covered up with rags. I had rags stuffed in there, you know, to cover it all up. So now that I'm done cleaning, I've removed those. I've also cleaned up all the sludge off the magnet down here. So I'm ready to close it back up and refill it. I've already cleaned and painted the cover. So all I need to do now is just apply the silicone to the cover, and then I can bolt it back on. So I'll do that next. Alright, I've got the cover ready to go here. I just need to put the silicone on. But the directions on the RTV, this is the kind I'm using, the directions say to assemble the parts as soon as you apply the material while it's still wet. So I want to make sure I have all my tools ready to go. I've got all the bolts here. I've cleaned those up as best I can. Tried to get the old silicone off the threads as much as I could. You can see the diff cover is painted. The inside is nice and clean. Got my torque wrench ready to go. I think the final torque spec is 30 foot-pounds. With the RTV, it says to torque it down tight, and then let it sit for an hour, and then turn the bolts a quarter to half turn again. So I've got my torque wrench set to 20 foot-pounds right now. I'll run all the bolts down to that, let it sit for an hour, and then I'll come back and torque them down to the final spec of 30 foot-pounds. I've also got my impact driver just to help run the bolts in finger tight more quickly than having to do it by hand. So really all I need to do is apply the RTV. I probably won't be able to do that cleanly without using both hands, so I'll have to set the camera down. I'll get it applied and then show you the final product. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but I'm going to want to start at the top, so I'll start up here, go around all the bolt holes, make my way back around. I'll have some overlap here, but you don't want to do that at the bottom, because if that's probably the most likely place to leak, and of course because of gravity all your fluid's going to collect in the bottom. So it's pretty simple science, but just make sure you overlap at the top. So anyway, let me get the gasket on and then we'll get ready to put it back on the truck. Alright, I've got the gasket sealant applied to the cover, and I'm getting ready to put it back on the housing. The idea will be to get the two top bolts in and very carefully try to push the cover onto the housing at this same, so that the surface is all contact at one time. I don't want to shift it and smear everything. I want to go straight on, get those two top bolts in finger tight, and then I'll do the two bottom ones, and then I can put the rest of them in finger tight and then torque them down to 20 foot-pounds. So unfortunately I don't have a camera person, so I'll just have to do it and show you when it's done, but that's the idea. Hopefully I can execute it. Obviously I'm not on a lift, so I'm kind of working on my stomach, which is not ideal, but we'll make it work. So wish me luck, and hopefully here in a minute we'll be refilling. Alright, I've got the cover back on. I've got all the bolts finger tight, so now I just need to torque them down to 20 foot-pounds to start. And you want to do sort of like a crisscross pattern, here, there, like that. Just work your way around. And then I'll let it sit for an hour, and then I'll come back and hit them down to 30 foot-pounds and refill it, and the job will be complete. So I'll let it sit, and I'll be back in a bit. Okay, I've got the cover bolts bolted back down to 30 foot-pounds now, and I've let the silicone sit up for a couple hours now, so it should be ready to refill. Obviously this here is our fill hole, and the idea is to just fill it up to the very bottom lip there. Here's my lubricant. Of course you need to check your manual to make sure you've got the correct lubricant. Everything that I've read calls for 75W90 in the rear differential, and you also need to pay attention to whether you have a limited slip or open differential. I've got a build sheet for my truck that says it has an open differential, so if you have a limited slip, then you need to use a friction modifier as well as the regular lubricant. Since mine is an open diff, then I don't need to do that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and fill it up to the bottom of that fill hole. Now I'm on a slight incline here, so I'm not going to really get it to the correct level where I am. I'm just going to fill it up to the bottom of the fill hole and then put the plug in, and I'll back down to the end of my driveway where it's flatter, and then I'll finish topping it off there where it's level, so I can make sure I get the correct fluid level. I think the manual says the capacity is 4.9 pints, and I believe these are quart bottles, so I think it's 2 pints per quart, so it should take about 2.5 of these bottles if my math is correct. So anyway, this is a simple process. The longest part was really just cleaning the old gasket material off, both off the cover and off the differential housing. And of course I took the time to paint my cover because it was in pretty sorry shape. It's not something you have to do, but anyway, I'd say overall it probably took me maybe 2 hours actual working time, and I'm pretty slow. I mean, somebody that does this more often could obviously do it faster, but it's also a project that anybody can tackle. So anyway, I hope this video will be helpful for somebody, and I hope you'll find it useful, and you can save yourself a few bucks by doing this yourself. Good luck, and thanks for watching.